Good morning, second grade. Well, here we are, our next biography, our next life story, and today it's kind of a special one. Today we're going to read Manfish, the story of Jaques Cousteau. Jaques Cousteau was a famous ocean explorer. He was also a very early understander of the importance of water. He was a water protector. So, we're going to look at his story. This is Manfish, a story of Jaques Cousteau, by Jennifer Byrne, illustrated by Eric Piberet. Once upon a time, in France, a baby was born under the summer sun. His parents named him Jacques. As he grew up, Jacques fell in love with the sea. Jacques is a French pronunciation. His name, in America, we would have probably called him Jack. Jacques fell in love with the sea. He dreamed of breathing beneath the waves and swimming as gracefully as a fish. In fact, he longed to become a manfish. Jaques Cousteau grew up to become a champion of the seas and one of the best-known oceanographers, which is a fancy word. He's the scientist that studies oceans. He became one of the best-known oceanographers in the world. In this lovely biography, poetic text and gorgeous paintings come together to create a portrait of Cousteau that is as magical as it is inspiring. So, as you can see, we have different parts of the sea, the fish, manfish. Bubbles rising through the silence of the sea, silvery beads of breath from a man deep, deep down in a strange and shimmering ocean land of swaying plants and fantastic creatures. A manfish swimming, diving into the unknown, exploring underwater worlds no one has ever seen and no one could ever have imagined. Our story starts many years before, in France, with a little baby boy born under the summer sun. His parents named him Jacques. From the very beginning, Jacques loved water, the way it felt on his hands, his face, his body, and the water made him wonder. He wondered why ships floated, why he floated, and why rocks sank. One day, Jacques read a story about a man who hid underwater by breathing through a long tube. Jacques tried it and discovered it was impossible. He dreamed that someday he would be able to breathe underwater for real. At night, Jacques dreamed he could fly with the birds, among the clouds, with his arms outstretched like wings. Jacques spent his days playing, experimenting, and creating. He wrote little books that he illustrated with his own drawings. And he was fascinated by machines. He studied blueprints and built models of a crane that was as tall as he was, and it actually worked. Movies fascinated Jacques too. He wanted to know how they were made, how the cameras worked, how the chemicals made pictures appear on the film. Jacques saved his allowance penny by penny until he had enough to buy a small home movie camera. The first thing he did was take it apart and put it back together. He began to film everything around him. He put his brother, cousins, parents, and friends in his movies. He dressed up as a villain with a painted-on mustache. And he made some very villainous films. Jacques was always the star, the director, the writer, and usually the cameraman. When Jacques finished school, he joined the French Navy. His ship sailed all the way around the world. Everywhere he went, he filmed what he saw. In China, he filmed men catching fish with their bare hands. They held their breath underwater for many minutes. Jacques wondered what that would be like. One day, at a beach, a friend gave Jacques a pair of goggles with rubber frames and a glass to look through. Jacques wore them into the ocean. Beneath the water, he was surrounded by a silvery green forest of sea plants and of fish he had never seen before. Everything was silent and shimmering. It was a whole new world. When he came up, he saw cars, people, buildings, and telephone poles. Once again, he went below into the magical underwater world. At that moment, Jacques knew his life was changed forever. His eyes had been opened to the wonders of the sea. Jacques and his friends Philippe and Didi began to dive together. They experimented to see how long they could stay underwater and how deep they could go. Jacques created a waterproof case for his camera to film the amazing kingdom that he and his friends were exploring beneath the surface. They made rubber suits to keep themselves warm and flippers to help them kick better, but Jacques wanted to stay down longer than just one breath at a time. He realized he needed to take more air with him, enough air to explore the mysteries of the depths, than the vast expanses of the ocean, to swim through the sea as free as a fish. He wanted to become a manfish, and he began to work on just how to do it. Jacques, Philippe, and Didi. On a warm summer day, Jacques stepped into the blue Mediterranean Sea with his new invention. He called it the Aqua Lung, because aqua means water, and our lungs are the part of our body that holds the air we breathe. Below the surface, Jacques swam and glided and dove. He did flips and somersaults. He stood upside down on one finger and laughed bubbles into the sea. Jacques could breathe beneath the water. Now he could swim across miles of ocean, his body feeling what only whales had felt, his eyes seeing only what fish had seen. The water made him feel like he was flying, just like in his dreams. Jacques had done it. He had become the manfish. Jacques was ready to explore the oceans of the world. He needed a boat and found a big old wooden navy ship named Calypso. In a year, He turned it from a warship into an explorer's ship. Jacques, Philippe, and Didi gathered a crew, their Aqua Lungs, and their hopes and their dreams, and set off to explore the inside of the sea, to film a world that had never been seen before. On their journeys, they dove deep into a seascape of plants, green and purple prickly plants, red branchy plants, spongy plants, wispy feathery swaying plants, slowly dancing to the rhythms of the sea. They discovered plants that could feed you, plants that could poison you, plants that looked like fish, and fish that looked like plants. Their cameras captured camouflaged scorpionfish, ugly as toads with poisonous spines, dorados, brilliant shining fish that glowed with the colors of emeralds, sapphires, and rubies, cheekboard fish with red and white cheeks from the head to the tail. Deep down, they discovered a kingdom of giant rays, fish that could fly through the water and wings that swim. They came face to face with a fish as big as a truck, with long fangs, lips like giant tires, and huge saucer eyes. They called it the truckfish. On the bottom, they found pink ghost crabs with eyes on long stalks, buried so deep in the sand that they looked like a garden of eyes, and flutefish with heads like horses and bodies in the shape of tubes sticking out of the rocky openings like pencils in a cup. We're discovering all of the beauty of the oceans. They swam with giant whales, hitched rides on sea turtles, and made friends with porpoises with shining eyes and smiling faces. They filmed fierce and frightening sharks, so strange and dangerous, Jacques and his crew had to build cages, not for the sharks, but for themselves, so that they could make their movies without being eaten. Everywhere the Calypso went, Jacques and his crew made films of what they saw, films that played in movie theaters, films that played on TV. Millions of people all over the world discovered the wonders of the sea for the very first time with Jacques, Philippe, and Didi and their adventurous crew. After Jacques spent most of his life making movies about the sea, he saw something happening, something shocking. Plants that used to be alive and healthy were now being poisoned. Fish were sick and dying. Jacques saw people, without realizing it, were slowly killing the sea and its creatures by dumping garbage and poisonous chemicals into the ocean that he loved so much. Jacques knew what he had to do. He had to make movies. Movies to warn people. Movies to save the sea. Jacques also spoke to presidents, to kings and queens, to people all over the earth, asking them to help save our oceans, our planet. And he spoke to children. Jacques dreamed that someday it would be you exploring the worlds never seen, never imagined, whole new worlds, silent and shimmering, worlds that are now yours to discover, to care for, and to love. Jaques Cousteau had the dream that you would take care of the oceans the way he wanted to take care of them. And to that end, I have just one question that you should write down in your notebook, which is, why is it important that we protect the oceans? Think about it. It's not just the water near us, but all the water on the earth that we need to protect. Stay safe, stay healthy, have a good day.